A few years ago, the term Juneteenth didn't mean anything to me. I had heard people say it before, but had no idea what it was. It wasn't until a couple of years ago that I realized it was a holiday celebrating the end of slavery. And it's not a new holiday either. Juneteenth has been celebrated annually since 1863, and it really grew in popularity around 1872 when a group of African American preachers and businessmen from Houston bought a 10-acre plot of land and created Emancipation Park to hold the city's annual Juneteenth celebration. So for over 150 years, men and women in this country have celebrated Juneteenth, and yet I just learned about it 3 or 4 years ago. For those of you that are like me and might need a reminder, here's a quick history lesson. On January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation went into effect. This proclamation set the groundwork to free the slaves living in the rebelling states. Though the Emancipation Proclamation was a huge step forward, it was not the end of the matter, mainly because half of the country didn't view Lincoln as their president. Hashtag not my president. So it wasn't until the Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox, Virginia, that the slaves were officially free. However, the story still doesn't end there, because Texas is a long way from Washington and news didn't travel quite as fast as it does today. So many slave owners neglected to tell the slaves that were working for them that they were now free men and women. Finally, on June 19, 1865, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect, and 2 months after Lee had surrendered, Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas to inform enslaved African Americans of their freedom and that the Civil War had ended. General Granger's announcement finally put into effect Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. Granger's words on that first Juneteenth, the people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free, was a not so subtle hint to the slave owners to stop what they were doing. Now, June 19th lives on in history as Juneteenth and is a reminder to all people that slavery was officially ended on that day. Or at least it's a reminder for some people that slavery officially ended, because I just learned about Juneteenth a few years ago. Most of my life I have been ignorant of Juneteenth, and I'm not sure if I just fell asleep in history class when this topic came around, which is a definite possibility, or if it was just never taught to me. Now, I'm going to ask for a little grace and forgiveness here, but I'm going to be honest. As a white male, the day slaves were freed really wasn't that big of a deal to me. So I lived on in ignorance. However, I'm going to say that it should be a big deal to all of us, especially us Christians. I have brothers and sisters in my church family that are direct descendants of freed slaves. Shouldn't I celebrate with them? I have neighbors and coworkers who experienced the nasty side of Jim Crow. Shouldn't I mourn with them? I have people in my church who are black. Shouldn't I know their stories? Part of the beauty of being in God's family is the different groups of people that all unite under the name of Christ. For a long time, I thought it was important to just ignore the differences because now we are all one family. But I think it's important that we celebrate those differences. God didn't just create one type of person. He created a whole globe of nations with rich histories and traditions, and we should celebrate those differences. So as we approach June 19th this year, I would challenge all of you watching to plan a time to sit down with a friend, neighbor, brother, or sister who has a different skin color than you do and just talk. Enjoy the fact that slavery has been abolished in this country. Acknowledge that not everything is perfect in this country, but rejoice in the fact that God created all men and women in His image. So I hope you all have a wonderful Juneteenth, and I want to leave you with a verse that reminds us that all of us were slaves at one point, but God has set us all free. Galatians 5, chapter 1 says this, "So Christ has truly set us free. Now, make sure that you stay free and don't get tied up again in slavery to the law." Thank you.